Hey, Erica, when you do our words of welcome, can you remind anybody that's at home that we're doing communion this morning and they're welcome to gather whatever elements is most comfortable to them? You're awesome.
I can almost see it, that dream I'm dreaming. There's a voice inside my head saying, you'll never reach it. Every step I'm taking, every move I'm making, feel lost in no direction. My faith is shaking, but I gotta keep trying. Gotta keep my head held high. So it's gonna be another mountain. I'm always gonna wanna make it move. Always gonna be an uphill battle. Sometimes you're gonna have to lose. Ain't about how fast I get there. Ain't about what's waiting on the other side. It's the climb. Love to have you join in. The struggles I'm facing, the chances I'm taking, sometimes they knock me down. No, I'm not breaking. I may not know it, but these are the moments that I'm gonna remember most. Just gotta keep going, and I gotta be strong. Just keep on pushing on, everyone. It's always gonna be another mountain. Always gonna wanna make it move. Always gonna be an uphill battle. Sometimes you're gonna have to lose. Ain't about how fast I get there. Ain't about what's waiting on the other side. It's always gonna be another mountain. Always gonna wanna make it move. Always gonna be an uphill battle. Sometimes you're gonna have to lose. Ain't about how fast I get there. Ain't about what's waiting on the other side. It's the climb. Well, who knew Miley Cyrus would get you all going so good? That was beautiful, beautiful. No matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, say this loudly. I am welcome and loved here at David's UCC. That is the truth. Why are we singing about the climb? Well, today we begin diving more deeply into our preparation for our search and call process, the process of calling a new pastor. And we're going to designate the first Sunday of each month for the next couple of months into some transformative conversations in this sanctuary space during our worship time, because we are the church. I also want to let you know, for those of you who are worshiping with us at home today that we are going to have a communion service, and so we invite you to grab whatever elements work for you. I suggest milk and Oreos to partake in communion with us. And I want to thank Jenny Camper for reading our scripture today.
Good morning. God has given ministry gifts to the people of God, to the church, for the benefit of all. We know, of course, that we do not all have all the gifts. And some, having just the gifts they have been given, are also called into the church's public ministry, into the ministry of word and sacrament. The Apostle Paul liked the image of the body, one body with many parts, all working together. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, 27 through 30. You are Christ's body. That's who you are. You must never forget this. Only as you accept your part of that body does your part mean anything. You're familiar with some of the parts that God has formed in his church, which is his body: apostles, prophets, teachers, miracle workers, healers, helpers, organizers, those who pray in tongues. But it's obvious by now, isn't it, that Christ's church is a complete body and not a gigantic, undimensional part. It's not all apostle, not all prophet, not all miracle worker, not all healer, not all prayer in tongues, not all interpreter of tongues. And yet some of you keep competing for the so-called important parts. But now I want to lay out a far better way for you. Writing to the church in Corinth, the Apostle Paul encouraged believers there to consider their own call. As we begin our work as a congregation in the search and call process, we may consider the call we all have from God by exploring a few of the following scriptures. From Acts chapter 2, verse 39, "For the promise of the Spirit is for you, for your children, for all people, even those considered outsiders and outcasts. The Lord our God invites everyone to come to him." Ephesians chapter 4, verse 4, "There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were all called to pursue one hope." Colossians 3, verse 15, "Let your hearts fall under the rule of the anointed's peace, the peace you were called to as one body, and be thankful." 1 Timothy chapter 6, 12, "Pursue a righteous life, a life of wonder, faith, love, steadiness, courtesy. Run hard and fast in the faith. Seize the eternal life, the life you were called to, the life so fervently embraced in the presence of so many witnesses." And then 1 John chapter 3, verse 1, "What marvelous love the Father has extended to us. Just look at it. We're called the children of God. That's who we really are. But that's also why the world doesn't recognize us or take us seriously, because it has no idea who he is or what he's up to. In these verses, all of us are called the children of God."
Please rise if you're able.
You can go ahead and be seated, and good morning. I did something I've never done before just a couple of days ago. I wrote a song. Not only did I write a song, I wrote a song with Carrie Newcomer. Anybody familiar with Carrie Newcomer? Folk artist who I remember when I was in seminary. My professor, I went to a very conservative evangelical seminary. There's nothing wrong with being conservative nor evangelical. I just happened to be neither one of those, but landed at a seminary that actually helped shape and form me because it gave me the opportunity to learn, to converse, but more so with folks who thought, believed, had a different worldview than mine, had a different faith view than mine. And it was a wonderful experience. But one of the things I remember from back in those days is a rather edgy professor for a seminary that's conservative, evangelical, introduced a Carrie Newcomer song, and like a number of other places that were doing the same thing, said, I want you to listen to this song, and is it sacred or is it secular? I think just about everybody in the classroom all agreed that the song that was played was most certainly secular, and the rather progressive liberal guy in the room said, I don't know, I see an awful lot of God here. Carrie Newcomer was our guest presenter for a clergy spiritual retreat that I was away at for this week. Did I mention I wrote a song with Carrie? Actually, Carrie and I wrote a song along with about 48 other gathered clergy. I don't even see, if she ends up putting it into production, I doubt my name is going to be anywhere on the byline. But it was an amazing process. We would get Post-it notes, and we would come up with a theme, and somebody would give an idea or a suggestion, and we played off of each other's ideas and suggestions, and when we agreed or we liked an idea, we would say the word bing. I thought at first we were paying tribute to one of my favorite characters that we lost from Friends, and realized that wasn't what we were doing. But we would have bings going left and right, and someone would offer up a suggestion, and there weren't as many bings, so it was sort of set off to the side. It wasn't that it was a bad idea. It wasn't that it was a bad suggestion. It simply wasn't resonating with most of the group that was gathered. Didn't mean that it might not later on, but it got set aside. It was amazing to me. I appreciate creatives. We have a lot of creatives in this church. Musically, creating liturgy, and a whole lot of other areas. I appreciate you folks, even as I'm appreciating you from afar or from a distance, because we need creatives in our faith community. But we're not all necessarily called to be creatives or be called to be creative in the exact same way, but we are all called and needed to build, to strengthen, to create what God is still speaking us into being here at David's in this time and place, and as we're moving forward. Now, I'm looking forward to, we had another person, very talented, who was a photographer who happened to be present at that clergy retreat, and so as we were creating this song, this pastor was out taking photographs that were being triggered by the imagery that we had put together on these little sticky pads as we were creating that song. And so by our closing, a YouTube video had been created and put together with the imageries of the photographs, the verses that we had compiled, and the music that interwove it all. Now, once that's out within the next week or two, I'm looking forward to sharing that song that I wrote. Oh, wait, that we wrote. with you. We have enough creatives, and I've already got permission from Carrie, that if we choose to want to sing that at any time, we can. So why do I lift that up other than being able to say I was able to hang out with Carrie for 3 days, or that I wrote a song? Message title for this morning is lifting, right? We need to arise. Church, I've now been with you for 6 months. It is time for us to now begin the heavy lifting of putting together your church profile so that you can discern who is being called to journey alongside you next as your next settled minister. I have loved every minute, and this is not my goodbye sermon. You still had me for a while. But it is my way of saying, for the last 6 months, I have fallen in love with this church. I have fallen in love with how you worship. I have fallen in love with the way you go out and serve within the community. I have fallen in love with the way you support one another. And I love the way that you welcome new people into your midst. And I love you so much that I am excited to journey alongside you in putting together your profile so that just the right person, she or he, they, can come and fall in love with you as well. I mentioned, though, that process that Carrie worked with us on wasn't just Carrie saying, hey, I want to find 2 or 3 of you, and we're going to go write a song, and then we're going to bring it back, and we're going to present it to the rest of you, and you enjoy it. Right? The process was we all sat together in a room. The creatives and those of us who weren't necessarily seeing ourselves as much in that light. But it was a process that involved all of us. I wasn't necessarily a creative, but I could tell what resonated with me as we were crafting this song, and my voice was finally able to say bing to things. Or things that maybe didn't resonate nearly as much, I didn't bing to. That's the invitation to each and every one of you. We need your bings. We need your voices. We need your involvement as we craft this thing that we call a church profile. Now, Eric has mentioned that over the course of the next several months, what we're going to do on the first Sunday of every month, in addition to celebrating table together, is we're going to sort of have our own Bing sessions, if you will. In other words, we're going to, if you were with us for our annual meeting, where we explored having worshipful work, where we had the opportunity to share what had happened, but began to celebrate what's coming forward this year. We're going to do that the first Sunday of the next several months. Please don't use that as the opportunity to say that's a great Sunday to be away, if nothing else. That's the Sunday that I really want you to circle on the calendar and say, by all means, I need to be there. For we will still sing, and we will still pray. Knowing this congregation, we will still eat something afterwards. But we're also going to help collectively put together a piece of paper that reflects most, as we can come up with, who you are. There are 3 primary questions that are contained within a United Church of Christ profile for a congregation. And that's basically, who are we? So we'll have conversations about who has this church been? The history that has brought you to this point. Who are you currently right now? And whether you have called this church and your family has called this church home for decades or longer, or whether you have just started to enter or return to this church, your voice and your history is part of who we are right now. Your being counts. We'll be doing that next month with some small group conversations. Introverts, I being one of them, if you've not yet picked up on that, your voice still matters, even if you sit relatively quietly during those sessions and what you want to say ends up resonating on your drive home. Write it down, send it in. The following month, we'll then have a conversation with our neighbor. All right? What does that mean? Is it just geographic or is it something else? And our third month, we are going to be talking about who is God calling us to be. Taking a look at who we are, some of our core values, our histories that have brought us to this point, the ministries that we have done and are envisioning and are growing, and pairing that up with looking around and saying, who is our neighbor? Who is still needing to be served? Who is still being left out? Who is alienated? Who's not welcome somewhere else? We take those three main questions along with all the fun stuff like historical data and finance. Did I mention that it takes a whole lot of people with a whole lot of skills and talents and passions to be church? Same can be said for that profile. So if I use any of these terms and they're offensive, I apologize. I say them as terms of endearment. If you happen to be a data geek, if you absolutely love numbers and that other stuff, not so sure, we need you to help us out as well. Because in addition to answering those three primary questions of who are we? Who is our neighbor? Who is God calling us to be? We're also going to be compiling historical data, financial data, and all of that gets prayerfully lifted into a profile that we hope to have, plan to have, sent to our association before the beginning of summer. I've been with you for 6 months. We're not rushing through this process. We're not selecting 3 or 5 people to speak for an entire congregation. The invitation, church, is for all of you to have voice. Perhaps some of you have been here long enough to go back a number of ministers. I can mention name after name, and I won't do it this morning because maybe I'll do part of that as part of our history, but you could probably bing when I mention the name of the pastor who was here when you first arrived. Or perhaps you could bing when I mention a name and they're the one that resonates most closely with who you are and what you appreciate. There may be even opportunities where if I lift a name, perhaps someone didn't resonate nearly as much. But they may have with someone else. All of these things come into play as well as we craft what your profile looks like. All right? Maybe your preference is the pastor wears a robe at all times. Oh, yeah, I haven't done that since I've been here. Maybe your preference is that the pastor wears Bermuda shorts and Hawaiian shirt. I have both of those. Maybe a Sunday I'll give that a try. I will take that as a bing of love somehow, some way. But more seriously, rather than what your preference is of what a pastor wears, is looking at what your preference is in leadership style. Or what giftedness that person, she, he, they bring to journey alongside you, church, as you're discerning where you're moving next. doesn't really matter much. Well, it might be important to you. But I would ask you to look beyond attire. Look beyond gender. Look beyond orientation and identity. And look instead at what giftedness that person that you are seeking will bring as they serve alongside you and lead you into new dimensions. I really wanted this not to be a commercial for our search and call process. I really want it to be an invitation. I don't do altar calls. That's never been my background, my tradition. I think it was for most of my classmates at seminary who said, yeah, that's a secular song. I can't envision singing that in church. And perhaps that's some of your background, and that's okay. Doesn't make it wrong. You're bringing that with you to play here as well. If you're relatively new to the United Church of Christ, and we have a tendency to have folks come in from a number of faith traditions or no faith traditions, a number of backgrounds or no backgrounds, simply there are a few things I want you to understand. We are congregational in our polity, but we are covenantal in our relationship with those things that are beyond us. So yes, we are autonomous to a point, but we have others who are looking out for us, who are in relationship with us, whether it be our association, whether it be our conference, whether it be our national or global settings. We talked a little bit about that with our budget, OCWM, and why it's important to continue to strengthen those relationships. But unlike some other traditions, they don't tell you who's going to serve here next. All right? Some of you may have traditions where they just sort of sent someone and said, this is now your pastor, whether you like them or not, whether you resonate with them or not, doesn't really matter a whole lot. God will make it work. And sometimes that happens. And sometimes it doesn't. Within our process, we put that profile together. We send that profile to our association. The association has profiles of ministers who are also in the search process, discerning where they're calling next. And then a group of folks from this church that will be representative of the congregation will look at the profiles that are sent. And they will discern based upon what you, I said once in a while I would use the word y'all, come together to craft. That song that you're all going to create together. They're going to discern who they think may work well. Then they will present after interviewing a couple of those folks. And after interviewing them, if the relationship feels like, yeah, this is it, that team that is representative of this congregation will say, we think this person. And that person then will come here. And then y'all, will say, does that note resonate with the song that I'm wanting us to sing? You'll have the opportunity to bing. As you have questions about the process, especially if you're new to the United Church of Christ, we're not just answering questions on first Sundays of the month. We're not just having conversations about those big topics the first Sunday of the month. They're really meant to kickstart conversations for throughout the month. Church, it's been a wonderful 6 months. I've mentioned that I have fallen in love with you guys for who you are, what you represent, and what you are dreaming to be. Together, I want you to craft a love letter, a love song that will speak to and resonate with another artist that will come and join in a melody of God's making. I don't know if that was a sermon or not this morning, quite honestly. There are some times I'm going, I'm not so sure. But I will tell you this. You are an incredible congregation. You deserve to have an equally blessed and gifted leader. Let us find a way to be able to pair that up. So I'm going to invite us to be in prayerful consideration as we have our musical response and before we approach table this morning.
We also invite you to a time of offering now, to give your gifts as you're able to the church. Also, our special offering through March is for one great hour of sharing and neighbors in need. We designate those gifts to those organizations or those movements. They'll be split evenly.
Sometimes I sound like a broken record when I do the invitation to the table, but remember, we at times draw folks from a variety of traditions or no traditions. We draw folks to us with a variety of histories and a variety of experiences. Some of those experiences and histories are wonderful, and some folks that we draw here, that God draws here, sometimes the histories aren't as positive Sometimes they've been harmful. Sometimes exclusive and alienating. So it may seem like a broken record, but one of my very favorite things to be able to do is to be able to say that within the United Church of Christ, specifically here at David's, we celebrate an open communion table. We celebrate a table that is not ours, it is God's. We celebrate a table that reminds us of God's grace and God's all-inclusive love. And if we believe that, and if we celebrate it, why in the world would we put a barrier around this? And so, my friends, if you so desire and feel led, whether you're a member of this church, another church, or no church, you as you are God's beloved. You are created in God's divine image. We celebrate if you are connected to this faith community, and we wish you well no matter where it is you may journey to. But at this time and place, this table is for those of us who are gathered. This table is also for those who are gathered with us in spirit but aren't able to physically be with us. Your experience with communion is no less valid just because you are not physically here. You're no less beloved because you're not in this space. We're reminded of that belovedness. We're reminded of when God, through Jesus, Jesus who was gathered with an interesting group of followers. I would imagine there were some creatives in that midst. If we read the gospel stories, if we read elsewhere, there certainly were creatives in the midst, and there were other folks that were questioning all over the place. There were other people that just weren't sure, but they were trying really, really hard. And within that mix of folks, Jesus gathered often and shared a meal. We're reminded oftentimes that he would take bread, bless it, break it, and then the most amazing thing is he would share it with all of them. Didn't ask him any questions, really. It wasn't a litmus test. There weren't boxes to check. There weren't stars to put on a poster whether they had earned their way to the table or not. He simply said, "You who are gathered are beloved to me. Let us break bread together and remember the good things of God and the direction that we're being called." I remember a certain meal that afterwards Jesus took a cup, blessed that as well. It went around the table to each and every who was there. There was no question about whether they were worthy or unworthy. They were gathered and they were loved. My friends, the same can be said for each and every one of us. There's no chart with gold stickers or not. There is simply the invitation because you are beloved and you are created in God's divine image. Our shortcomings, our failings, our celebrations, our joy, our uncertainty. All of that into the mix. You are invited to come and to receive simply for who you are and whose you are. If you're here for the first time, or if it's been a while, you're invited to come forward to receive. We invite you to take a piece of bread. Go ahead and take it here, as well as a cup. You can place the cups in the basket to the side of the table. You can come up either side. The bread is all gluten-free. We continue to try to tear down as many barriers as possible. So I'm going to do a side note to the table. If you think of something that feels like it's a barrier, whether it's table or worship or elsewhere that you're experiencing, we want to know. For in addition to this table being barrier-free, our desire is to make sure that this community of faith is barrier-free as well, physically and otherwise. My friends, come and receive. You are invited simply because you are beloved.
Carol, do you have prayers for the community to offer today?
God's grace and God's love to you, my friend.
Good morning. This past week has shown us the fragility of life. You know, we get caught up in the daily grind of our work and our activities, and sometimes we don't pay attention to our family members or to our friends, and even sometimes to ourselves. This past week, the prayer chain has prayed for a member who had a serious fall and will be having a long recovery. We prayed for members who have COVID and are dealing with those factors that virus throws at us. We prayed for two of our members who left this earth and leave behind very grieving families. I heard a story not long ago of a man who was driving through a large city, and suddenly a brick came smashing into his passenger door. He furiously stopped the car and ran around the car to the sidewalk, where he found a young boy standing near the curb. "Why did you throw that brick at my car?" he demanded. The boy began to cry, and he said, "I didn't really want to, but I didn't know any other way to get someone's attention. My brother fell out of his wheelchair, and I can't get him back in. I really, really need help." The man's fury quickly dissipated as he looked down the sidewalk and saw the brother lying beside the wheelchair. The man drove home afterwards thinking of that incident and how he isn't always present for others and doesn't pay attention to their needs. He didn't get the big dent repaired on his car. He kept it there to remind him to pay attention and be mindful of others. Sometimes we need a theoretical brick thrown at us to help us bring ourselves to the present, to make us stop and take notice and see how we can help the situation instead of passing it on for others to take care of. Dear Father, Mother, Lord, help us to be mindful of our actions and our thoughts. Help us to be present to those around us, and give us generous hearts and hands to help those who may need it. In your name we pray. Amen.
So we do have some things happening, not only this week, but moving forward. But I want to go back to last night. There were party animals here that were here much later than I was, playing euchre and board games. And I have no idea what time you guys close this church down. 12:30, 1 a.m., something along that time. But it was so much fun to get here and to see so many people just having fun in fellowship with one another. And new faces, folks that just hopefully knew that they were welcomed simply for who they were, around some very interesting games that are now on my Christmas list. After worship this morning, we are beginning our Still Speaking Bible study. We're going to be doing that in the fireside area of Fellowship Hall. There wasn't a sign up for that. You are simply welcome to join us. They're not necessarily long studies. It's an opportunity for us to gather together to share our own voices and with some opportunities. I believe, Heidi, you're leading this morning's session, and I told you I might pop in and assist where I can. We've got our Monday morning Bible study group that meets in our library that we're looking forward to having. Another slide. I want to remind folks that before the service has already happened, but now after the service, Eileen has got some beautiful cards out in Fellowship Hall, just in time for Valentine's Day. I would encourage you to take a look at that. All of the proceeds to those are going towards the mission and ministry of what we do here at David's. This is a new one for me. We are going to have a baby goat lamb Graham. So Sunday after church, we're going to have a goat here. You could have your picture taken with a goat. How many of you want to raise your hands and say, that's been on my bucket list for a long time? It wasn't until I saw it, but now it is. Who knows, maybe down the road we might even have goat yoga here at David's. This year we're going to be doing an Ash Wednesday service here in this space. I mentioned it in my newsletter. I will mention it very briefly. I'm going to introduce y'all to something that I've introduced to the last number of churches that I have served, which is something that I have affectionately called Sparkle Ash. Simply, we will still have the black traditional ash, but I have come to love to remind folks that in the midst of our Lenten journey, We aren't called to go and hide. We are called to go and shine with the light of Christ into a very dark world. So even as we can remember that perhaps things aren't always the way we want them to be, nor have we always done the way we want things the way we've wanted them to, we don't have to live an entire time of remorse. We can be reminded, and then we can move forward. Each step in each day, a new beginning. So I realize it's Valentine's Day. But as I mentioned in the newsletter, what better way to be able to come and begin a Valentine's Day than to be reminded that you are beloved of God, and that we are called then to go and shine into a world that so much needs to experience God's love. Greg, come talk to us about Green Team.
So I bring my baggage with me. So since 1970, my mother-in-law has been collecting her taxes, and before then even, they're right here. Just wanting people to know that every month our goal is to have a green spot announcement, and this is one of the first of those. Through Connie Ray and Linda Hambley now, Connie has been hosting the Green Team in the Mercy and Justice Committee. Thank you, Connie. And so we, I say we, that's really just me, but you can offer to help in whatever way you want to. Our goal is to help this church become a creation care justice church. And so yesterday I had the gift of going to Delaware County, and there was a bunch of very passionate people with the Pollinator Pathways organization creating ways to have habitat in people's own backyard. And so our notion is that our own habitats and spaces that we live in can become homegrown national parks, okay? And this is through a gentleman named Doug Ptolemy. Our goal is to be able to help our congregation share and educate and spread that news. And these will become part of my compost pile. They'll become part of my path in my garden, and I'm not wasting all this paper, I'm using it. If you would like to recycle any paper, there's a area in the hallway there as well as in the back. And if you'd like to help with creating a green team here at this congregation, I could use some help. So let me know. Thank you.
A few more announcements to share with you before we sing our sending hymn, which is Bring Your Appetites and Your Wallets. On Sunday, February 17th, 18th, what's the Sunday? 18th. Thank you, that day. Baked potato, salad, and ice cream sundae bar. Not sure I can compete with goats, but I also don't want to serve goats. All of the money raised for that luncheon after church is going for our 3 youth that are participating on our International Affairs Seminar. And so that money raised will go towards Evelyn and Savannah and Kenneth as they join me and a group of other folks throughout Ohio to go to Washington, D.C. and to New York City, and to be able to see how our lives of faith can impact the greater good in politics and beyond. And so I want to make sure that that is raised. Actually, that may be the only thing I have to add at this point. So I'm going to invite you to stand if you feel so comfortable and if you feel so led. Let us sing ourselves out with, if you have your hymnal 249, if not, they're on the screen. Peace I leave with you.
Peace I leave with
Peace.